Hello, I'm delighted to welcome back global wellbeing expert Francine Watson. In this, the second of three bite-sized Tuckerstone insights on wellbeing. Today, we want to discuss the importance of wellbeing and actually how a shift of approach to how it's measured and how the initiatives are developed will actually have a material impact on the commercial performance of your organization.
Cool. So thank you very much, Matt. Thank you for having me, and it's great to join you guys again. So I sort of wanted to give sort of a bit of context to sort of start us off today. So there's some really interesting articles coming out from the Journal of Occupational Environmental Medicine about the importance of organizations effectively promoting a culture of well-being, because they actually outperform those that don't. And interestingly as well, there's kind of, again, like a fantastic sort of commercial imperative here with research by McKinsey and Business in the Community. They're showing that the economic value of improving well-being can be between 130 billion to 370 billion pounds per year. So that's basically 6 to 70% of the UK's GDP, just for context, or the equivalent of £4,000 to £12,000 per UK employee. So again, that's research by McKinsey. So there's a fantastic sort of staggering sort of results there.
Well, yeah, I mean, very eye-opening as well. And actually, it clearly shows to me that there has to be a laser sharp focus for any organization on both understanding but imperatively improving employee well-being, because it correlates directly to business performance.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, the pandemic really helped to underscore it. I think off the back of the pandemic, though, then what we saw was this huge boom in sort of the supplier market sort of for well-being. We saw like an explosion of apps and all sorts of solutions. And I think the interesting thing there is we're also seeing really rapidly escalating healthcare costs. So Aon has estimated that they might be sort of raising to as much as 8.5% in 24. So again, that places a huge pressure to demonstrate that kind of return on investment on well-being spend. And a lot of firms will sort of track their sort of expenses related to employee health. They might sort of think about sort of tracking the impact of injuries, health-related absence, maybe take up of their utilization programs. But these measures, they don't really give us an insight into the actual well-being of the organization, the well-being of their colleagues. That is probably a bit sort of too late by that stage, some of those measures in there.
Too reactive.
So, yeah. So the challenge has to be really, how can you sort of measure well-being and also measure the impact of the strategies and whether they are enhancing the health of your population, right? So those kind of sort of more forward-thinking companies are now starting to think about, right, can we develop some sort of an index that give us an idea really around, what's going to work for us in our particular dynamic. And ideally, the sort of the holy grail is really to kind of try to shift your spend from the kind of sort of the recovery piece through to the more sort of proactive spend, right? So, and I guess the other sort of interesting lens on this is that we're starting to see investors, we're starting to see shareholders, regulators take a much bigger interest in this idea of organizational resilience. We're starting to see a greater emphasis on the management of health risk, really, if you like, as part of the social component of ESG, which is the environmental, social, and governance goals. And sort of an example to bring that to life is that the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive is actually expecting people to report on that from 2025.
No, absolutely. And I think I genuinely believe that most leaders understand the commercial importance of improved well-being. I suspect, however, many don't really know how to accurately measure it. And that's obviously absolutely critical. So I was wondering, therefore, if you could share some real life practical insights into how an organization can both understand, measure, and then transform their approach to well-being.
It doesn't have to be complex, and you can start as sort of small as you like and kind of sort of build up to it. I think that's one of the sort of the brilliant pieces of this, and it's like you would approach any other aspect of sort of trying to demonstrate a business case in your organization, if you like. So there's lots of different measurement tools available, and you might have sort of different starting points depending on where you are as an organization. But you could think about things like surveys. So can you integrate a set of questions into your sort of engagement survey, for example? Can you think about perhaps some sort of a pilot study or pilot intervention? For example, asking a set of questions beforehand, perhaps doing a training intervention or an awareness campaign, and then a few months later, kind of retesting and seeing what the impact is within the organization, highlighting those differences. The thing that's really important, that was really sort of drilled into me in a corporate environment, is really you need to demonstrate actionable insight. So, executives will be interested in the so what. So, this is increased by X%. So what can I take away from that? Or if you're going to do a study, what's your hypothesis going into it to help to kind of then identify what your actions are going to be? So really that actionable insight is absolutely key.
Absolutely.
And then I guess the other bit is then thinking about, how can you be really sort of comprehensive in that approach? So it's not just about thinking about sort of subjective health, if you like. So whether someone is well or they're not, or they kind of go off on injury or sort of long-term absence, for example. What we've seen that was really helpful in kind of creating a well-being index was thinking about, factors like work-life balance, job satisfaction, the organizational culture more broadly, kind of correlations into some aspects of inclusion, for example. It's really about understanding what the drivers are of well-being. Otherwise, you're not kind of really getting sort of in behind the skin of it.
Absolutely.
And the tricky thing, though, that I'll just kind of emphasize, though, is some of the data privacy concerns, right? So you have to be really, really careful with this, because you need to obviously kind of comply with it, data privacy regulations, for example, like GDPR. But there's also an important consideration for the colleagues themselves. So making sure that you're really transparent around how that data is going to get utilized, that you're really sort of guaranteeing that kind of confidentiality, and that results are going to be looked at in aggregate. Because when people feel a bit more sort of assured that their sort of answers are going to be sort of anonymized, then they feel that they might be able to probably be a bit more sort of open with what they're experiencing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because what you described there, in many ways, I think is super important across a lot of people initiatives. And that's actually not to see them in isolation, but to have them as a thread running through almost everything that your people function or your organization is doing. So for it to be effective and prioritized, it can't just be an individual piece. It has to be part of the wider and total employee experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's also about kind of trying to be a little bit more creative and understanding what the drivers might be of that person's kind of well-being, and really using that data-driven approach to then help to inform the strategy, which I think we're going to be talking about next. But yeah, that data-driven piece is absolutely fundamental. Yeah.
Thank you for articulating that so clearly, because the commercial impact that comes across from having a really robust and measurable wellbeing strategy is obviously super important. And again, we would really welcome any comments, questions in the section below. And we look forward to welcoming you for the third and final Insights edition. And actually, what we're going to talk about in that is really how to embed your wellbeing strategy into an organization, and how, by creating lasting behavioral change, we can really make sure that is, standing up within the organization.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.